welcome to Ponder and Practice, the podcast for professional, high-achieving women who are ready to swap hustle for harmony, exhaustion for energy, and pain for power. I'm Dr. Catherine Hoffman, and I help value-driven, ambitious women achieve their goals by setting artful, integrity-aligned boundaries that create space for meaningful work and sincere connection. So, are you ready to discover the power of no? Well, let's get started. Hey there, friend, and welcome to another episode of Ponder and Practice. Thank you so much for joining me here today. It is both a pleasure and an honor to be here with you. I hope that you're doing well after the Thanksgiving holiday if you're in the United States, and that you have been able to do a little something to celebrate Native American Heritage Month and Native American Heritage Day, which is the day after Thanksgiving. I don't know if this is new, like when this popped up, but as I've been doing my social planning, and my marketing planning, I saw that this popped up on my calendar, and I'm so happy about it. I think it's such a better way to spend the day after Thanksgiving than Black Friday is actually honoring and connecting with and increasing our awareness of the folks who inhabited this land before we did. And still, also, Native Americans didn't disappear, right? They got displaced and moved and really horrifically treated, but they're still around. So let's pay homage to them and honor them. And if you are curious about what you can do, you're like, yeah, okay, that's nice, Catherine, but I don't know what to do with this. Something I really like, an activity that I really like to do, and this can be especially awesome if you have kiddos at home and teaching them as well, but there are maps out there where you can look up your area and see whose tribal land you are living on. So before it became whatever it is now, whatever the naming of the space is now, who used to live there? And then go learn a little bit about those people, learn a little bit about their tribes and maybe their ecological practices and culture and all kinds of different things. I think it's a really nice way to honor the folks who have come before us in this space. So, little PSA there. Today, my topic is about setting boundaries without being emotional. This is a big deal, and it's really challenging for myself included, especially recently. I don't know what's going on recently, but it has been a little bit of a struggle, man. Just to stay cool and be calm and collected, and partially because I'm recording this as we're getting ready to shut down all of our stuff for a week over the Thanksgiving holiday, but yeah, boy. So I come to this conversation with complete understanding and 100% compassion for wherever you are in this process of learning to set boundaries. I get it. It can be really challenging and hard, especially when your emotions get involved, because once your emotions get involved, the brain kind of shuts down and shuts off, and then it has a way of kind of all going downhill from there. So, before I get into it though, I do want to share that I have 2 resources available for you specifically on this topic. One is the Anger as Awareness Guidebook. This is a little book I put together, last year. I can't believe it's been around that long. I should take a look at it again and update it. But it walks you through using anger as a tool rather than hiding from your anger or trying to pretend it doesn't exist or ignore it or anything like this, but really diving into anger and going through it and seeing what's actually here. What is this about? Where is my safety? Where does it feel like my safety has been compromised, and how do I set that boundary up to restore my sense of safety? That's the way to get at the root of anger, from my perspective at least. And the second one is the Build Better Boundaries Guide and Workbook. I did a webinar in September, and this was August, and this was the natural outgrowth of that. And it contains all the information I went through in that webinar, but walks through and has some really good reflection questions to help you sort out where are your boundary setting skills? Why are your boundary setting skills what they are? How have you gotten to this place? And then where are you trying to go, and how can you do that in a way that is on purpose and intentional? So Those two guides are available on my website shop. It's ponderandpractice.com/shop. And then if you scroll down a little bit, I need to update the website, but if you scroll down a little bit, you'll come to those two things. They're the only things there right now. So if this is a topic that you want to learn more about, dive more into, those two things are a really great place to start. And at some point, one of my goals for 2021 is to put together like a really comprehensive book about all these things. I'm still in the process of sort of solidifying isn't the right word, but setting up my thoughts and strategies about boundaries in a way that is more systematic. So as that happens, I am going to be releasing a new, like more hefty book in the next year, hopefully, fingers crossed. But in the meantime, these are two really lovely electronic resources, workbooks. You can print them out and use them that way. And yeah, they're each, $9.95, so fairly nominal investment and a pretty big payoff if you invest in it and do the work. Okay, so today's topic is, like I said, setting boundaries without being emotional. And the word emotional is one I don't love here, and I probably should have come up with a better one. But it's, as a descriptor, it's apt, and so that's why I'm using it. Women are taught to not be angry. We're taught that we're not supposed to be angry or have anger or experience anger in any real way. And so what happens for lots of women is that they notice that they do get angry, and then they will be like, no, I'm not supposed to feel that. And so they will shove that down or stuff it or ignore it or try to make it go away, try to distract themselves out of it, whatever it might be. But they don't let themselves feel it. And so that anger gets bigger and bigger and bigger because there's so much effort being put into trying to make it go away. And then what ends up happening is that something small will happen and then they kind of explode over whoever happens to be close by. And again, I get it. I don't have judgment about this at all. And so if you're listening, you're like, oh gosh, yeah, that's totally me. It's all good. It happens. And the point here is and the reason why I recommend the anger workbook is because the first step here is really feeling and acknowledging your emotions such as they are. That doesn't mean you have to do anything about them. It doesn't mean that you have to involve anybody else in them. But you do gotta sit back and say, oh my gosh, I am really angry right now, and feel that. And that's not a cognitive process. I so dearly wish that it was. Let me tell you, for my own sake. I wish that you could cognitively sit back and think through your emotions, but you really gotta feel them. And the place where you feel them is in your body. So the first step here is to, sorry, I'm taking a sip of my tea latte here. But the first step here is to make some time and space so that you can actually feel what you're feeling and have some self-compassion and non-judgment and tenderness for yourself that is what is happening and that's okay. And for everyone, this looks different. It doesn't have to, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to like take a week-long retreat or something like this. It can be as simple as taking a walk around the block, taking an extra long shower maybe, and tapping into what's happening in your body. Like whatever this time and space is that's available to you, use that and have the intention of feeling whatever the feelings are. And even better, if you can get to the place where you're like, I don't even need to label them, I just need to feel what's there and let it move. The thing about anger, and I'm talking about anger specifically because anger is a really big neon sign that your boundaries are out of whack. Because Anger comes up as a response to feeling like your safety has been compromised. And it doesn't have to be physical safety, though it certainly can be. It can also be emotional safety. It can be psychological safety. If there's a sense that your ego is threatened, anger comes up. And you don't have to look too far to see examples of this, especially in the United States. And so the reason I'm harping on anger is because it gives such good information, and it's so important to pay attention to because it points you in the direction of where your boundaries are off. And your boundaries are off wherever you're feeling like your safety has been compromised. And until there's this thought that if you ignore it and don't feel it, that it will just go away and that you won't have to deal with it. And that simply isn't true. You can think back through your own experience if you've ever tried. I like the example of, this is not emotional and not charged for most folks. For some people it is. But if you've ever had a closet and you just kept shoving stuff in there and you're like, oh yeah, I'll get to it later, I'll get to it later, I'll get to it later. And then eventually you just keep shoving stuff in there and maybe once or twice have to get something out. So you go dig around and get what you need, but then you just shove more stuff in there. At some point, you're putting all this stuff in, but you haven't processed it or organized it or sorted through and figured out what's actually worth keeping here. What can I get rid of? How can I organize this in a way that I can access what I need so that I'm not tripping all over everything? And so that closet gets to a point where you can't even close the door maybe, and you're just shoving everything in there and trying to force the door closed. That's the analogy I like to use for folks when they're ignoring emotions, and especially anger. And I think it's a good one for anger, especially if you think of a cartoon situation where there's just a closet jammed full, and then the person goes to pull something out, and then just all this stuff spills out on top of them and drowns them, in a manner of speaking. That's what happens when we don't pay attention to our anger and acknowledge what's happening and let it happen. And let it move, because we have to sift through that and feel it and move it and kind of figure out okay, what here is worth keeping? What can I get rid of? How do I organize this in a way? And that's the cognitive process that comes after. But first things first, you have to feel it. You have to experience it in your body. You have to let it move. And I do say have to on purpose, because it's not, ignoring your anger is not something, you can't get away from it. It's gonna show up one way or another. If it doesn't show up as, a verbal explosion on someone else or some sort of other outburst, it's gonna show up in the form of an embodied illness. I think this is why a lot of women end up with chronic fatigue syndrome. I think this is why a lot of women end up with fibromyalgia. There's a history of trauma, and there's anger that goes along with that, and the anger is not supposed to happen. And that sense of safety is profoundly compromised, and there's not, because we don't acknowledge the anger and we don't do that work of figuring out oh, how do I set up this boundary so that I can keep myself safe and be able to trust myself? The body expresses that, and the body says, okay, well, I gotta keep myself safe, so I just need to be in pain and tired and shut down, because that means I can't go anywhere, I can't see anyone, I can't do anything, and that will keep me safe. And your body's job is to keep you healthy and safe. That is your body's job. And so I don't say this with any judgment for anyone with chronic pain or these invisible illnesses at all. And I do think we do ourselves a disservice when we don't call out the fact that there's a lot more going on there than just some physical stuff. And there's typically a lot more work to do than just that physical stuff. So, at any rate, first things first, you gotta feel what's there. I think I have doubled down on that. We can move on. The second thing is to reflect and think back. What happened? What's actually going on here? And this is where we do get into the more cognitive processes. And when I gave this analogy of the closet and shoving stuff in there and never pulling things out and sorting them through and sifting them out and organizing them, this is what the reflection is. So feeling your emotions, letting them move, is like pulling the door to that closet open and just like letting everything come out. Like, all right, this is what's here. Let me just be in this mess, such as it is. And then the reflecting piece and considering like what's the context in which this anger has grown. How did it start? Maybe if there's a specific situation that happened, looking into that more deeply and thinking through and reflecting on like what's going on here. That's equivalent to picking up the things that have fallen out of your closet. And, you know, if you're a Marie Kondo person, being like, oh, does this spark joy? No. Okay, let me get rid of this. Oh, what about this thing here? Do I need to keep it? Is it useful? No. Okay, I can get rid of this. But then eventually you're going to pick something up and you're going to say, this is important. I need this. That's what you're doing when you're reflecting. You're picking out those pieces that are useful information that can inform you for the next steps moving forward. And this can be hard to do, and it can take a little while. Sometimes it is really simple, and you can sit down in a course of, 15, 20 minutes and maybe journal it out and be like, oh, right, that's what's going on. And sometimes it takes some much deeper reflection to get at the root of what's actually been going on. I know I've had this experience, and I've talked to clients who have had this experience as well, where they're like, gosh, I didn't even really understand what was going on until I talked it over with a friend. Or, if you have a therapist or someone and maybe it's like, oh, I didn't get that until I was able to like process it out loud with someone else. So that can be another really good way to do this work of reflecting and figuring out what's been going on. Sometimes, the other thing that can be helpful is if you're just like, I don't even know what's going on here. This seems like a lot. It's very complicated. Like, this mess has burst out of my closet and legit like filled my entire room, my entire house. Like, I'm just drowning in all of this stuff. It can be really helpful to set an intention and direct your subconscious mind and just say something like, you know what? I don't really know what's going on here. I'm ready to learn. I'm willing to dive in and figure this out. And you know what? When it's time for those insights, I trust it's going to come into my conscious awareness, right? And then leave it, walk away, do something else. And I find that as you do this, insights come up over the course of days and weeks, and it can be pretty profound what arises from that space. Because you've given yourself permission that maybe you can't name it now, but you've given yourself the permission that, yeah, okay, I'm ready. I can deal with this. I know what's up. And your mind can take that in and churn through it and then spit out, oh, okay, you're ready? Great. Here's, one thing, two things, three things. And then you can use those insights and information to move forward. So the first thing is to feel what you feel. Let that move. Come to a place of calm. And then reflect on what's actually useful here, what was going on, what information do I need to carry forward with me, what was the context, what actually are my feelings, where has my sense of safety been compromised, what do I need to do to put a boundary to restore my sense of safety. So those are the questions you ask yourself as you're reflecting. And that leads us into this next step, which is strategizing. So you figured out what happened, you've figured out where you're at with it and where your safety was compromised, and now it becomes the process of figuring out how exactly do you set that boundary back up in a way that's meaningful. So I'm sitting here right now looking at a picture, and it's like fields, and there are stone, like short stone walls between the green fields, right? That's a very specific type of boundary, effective for that specific type of space. If you went in, it looks like the English countryside or something. If you went into the English countryside and put up picket fences, That's a different kind of boundary. Maybe it would work, it would change the look of things, it would change the feel of things, it wouldn't be as efficient given the materials that you have, so, you know, maybe not the best option. Or if you think about, no, I don't want to bring that up. Or if you think about having like a moat around a castle, right? That's a very different boundary for a very different purpose. Or if you think about if you've ever driven in the countryside and there are cattle grates to keep the cattle in a specific place because they don't want to walk across the grates. Very different boundary, right? That's not going to work for cats or dogs, but it'll work for cows. Whereas if you put up an electric fence, okay, that's going to be useful for probably most things that come through. So take some time and strategize, like what's the thing that would restore your sense of safety? In terms of boundary setting in our context, that could look like I need to set limits on how often I use my phone. I need to communicate to someone that they're not allowed to speak to me in a specific way, and that I will only respond if they treat me with the care and respect that I deserve. Or it could be something like, I need to add a note at the end of my emails that I'm only checking my emails at this time of day every day. Something, it can be anything really, and you can get as creative as you want to be around what makes the most sense here, and you can get as simple as you want to get. The point here is to think through, like, once you know what's happened and once you can pinpoint where that breach has occurred, then it's a matter of mending that breach and setting it up so that you can create a container for yourself where you feel safe, where you can have meaningful interactions. I'm trying to think of another example. If you are someone who is in business for yourself and say you have, you know, you are really angry and you can't figure out why, and then you think through and you're like, oh, right, I had a client who who wanted a lot of extra work for the same, like for the initial estimate that we did, but the amount of work that they're wanting is like 40 hours more than I had quoted him originally, and like you're really upset about that. So to me, that would say, oh, your sense of autonomy and safety and being able to be compensated appropriately has been compromised. And so that's where that breach has occurred. And so how do you build that back up? Oh, you go to that person and you say, you know what? I hear you. I know you're really passionate about this. I want to deliver to you the best quality product that I possibly can. And given our initial conversation and this initial estimate that I gave you, I can't do all these extra things, and here's why. So maybe a boundary is having a really clear communication about, you know, this initial estimate included this for XYZ amount of projects or time, and then now what you're asking is really going to include so much more, and here's why. So we need to renegotiate, or I can leave that part off and we can just do what we agreed to in the first place, right? Stuff like that. So that's another example of what I'm talking about here. Something that can be so tremendously helpful as you're strategizing is scripting your words. Figure out what you're going to say in advance and practice it. Practice it, practice it, practice it. Especially if you're someone who's new at doing this. And honestly, this is something I do myself still, because the way that I experience emotions and the way that I have to come around to the logic behind them and figure out how to communicate it to someone else, it takes me some time and energy. And I do spend a fair amount of time thinking through, like, okay, I think I get this, but I'm not quite sure how to explain this to someone else. Like, I take some time and I think through, like, what is the best way to say this? So think about, be as specific as you can about what are the words I'm going to use, what languaging feels like it's within my integrity, it feels like it's in alignment, and is going to get my point across in a way that is clear, compassionate, and also firm. Like, I'm not going to back down on this. This is what it is. And I see you, like, I get that this is a thing, and moving through it in a way that honors both you and the person that you're interacting with. So first 3, feel your emotions, let them move, calm down. After you feel them, you will naturally return to a state of calm if you've let them move, if you've let that emotion happen sufficiently. It will happen. It may feel like it's taking forever, but I promise you, you will get there. Reflect, sort through all those things that have popped out of the closet and flooded your space, and what is actually going on here, and figure out what the useful pieces of information are. And then strategize. So now you felt the thing, you know what happened. Now what boundary do you need to set up to restore your sense of safety and autonomy, and to create that container for meaningful interaction and a space for you to thrive, if it's something that you don't necessarily need to talk to someone else about. And then you gotta go do it. That's the last step here, is that you gotta go do it. So you can do all the planning in the world, you can feel all the feels all day long, you can reflect forever and ever and ever, but at some point you kind of gotta go do it, or what's the point of all this other work that you did internally? So, and this is where there's a really big chance for those emotions to come back and get really intense really fast. And as someone who has been there, who has tried to set a boundary and had a quick, oh, I am super angry again, okay, this is happening. I've been there. I've had some very unflattering moments, let me assure you. So just let me normalize whatever experience you're having or might have. If that happens, if you find that you do start to set a boundary with someone else, you use these beautiful words that you laid out and your anger comes up really hot, really fast, step away. It's okay. It's okay to say to the person, I can't do this right now. I thought I could. I need to come back later. And it's also, the other thing that I can speak to is that being in an angry, being in a fight with someone can feel very comforting in a lot of ways, because it's a very clear connection and it's very obvious that you are locked in this engagement in a very specific way, and that can feel super safe, even though it's uncomfortable and also doesn't feel super safe. But there's something about that ability to maintain that connection and that intensity of connection that can be very comforting, in a way that might sound counterintuitive. And so I encourage you, if your anger flares and you aren't able to step away, but you notice, oh, hey, I'm really angry right now and this is panning out in a way that I did not intend it to, that's a great awareness. Also, if you realize that your anger is coming up and you're like, oh, I need to step away right now, and the other person that you're talking with says, you can't leave, how dare you walk away from me, this, that, or the other, I am here to give you permission to say, you know what, it matters to me that we connect in a way that's meaningful and in a way that honors both of us. That's not going to happen right now, so I need to step away. I'm going to leave right now. I will be back and we will have this conversation, but right now is not the time. And then it is 100% okay to walk away and close the door, get out of the house, whatever it is that you need to do. I am here to give you permission that even if that other person is like, you can't leave, this, that, or the other, and no, this is not a good situation, it's okay. Walk away. Just leave. It's totally fine. If that person really does truly care about you and love you, you will calm down, they will calm down, and more than likely you will be able to come back into a space where you can both talk about it with a level head, you can figure it out and work through it together. And also this can be a really sticky point, because if you're in a place with that other person where they're not respecting that and they're not willing to come back and talk through these things, yeah, it's a pretty good sign that that relationship is not one that you necessarily want to be in for very much longer. So, and that's why this work can be really profound and intense for folks, because not always, but the implications can be very intense and far-reaching. But For our purposes today here, what I really want you to walk away with is the fact that, you got to feel the things. You have to let them move, feel the emotions, do some reflecting, like what exactly just happened here? Where was my safety breach? Like what is actually going on? Like, let me get clarity about what's happening for me. What do I need to make myself feel safe again? And then strategize about how do you set that boundary back up? How do you do it in a way that's meaningful? What are the words that you need to say? What are the systems maybe that you want to put in place? What are the notifications you want to turn off your phone? What are the conversations that you need to have, whatever it is? And then act. Go do that thing. And say what you need to say. And having a script here gets really helpful because sometimes what happens, there are kind of 4 ways I've seen this go down. The first way is that if there's a boundary with someone else, is that you figure out what it is. You're like, all right, this is what I need to have happen. This is the boundary I need to set up. Great. And then you're ready, right? You're good to go. And so you walk into the situation with the other person and you say what you need to say. And the first way this can go down is they're like, oh yeah, totally, no problem. Like, happy to do that. Thank you so much for telling me whatever it is. Awesome. Like, that's the best possible case. Everybody goes on, life is happy, good to go. The next thing that I see happen is that you go in, you're ready to go, and you start to talk, and then your anger flares up so hot, and the other person is like, I don't understand what's happening here. Like, why are you really mad at me? I was just chilling. And then, you hopefully realize what's happening. You're like, my bad. Let me go repeat this process. I'll be back in a little bit. And then you step away and kind of repeat the process. And hopefully when you come back to that person and say what you need to say and are clear and calm about it, and then they come to you and they're like, oh yeah, totally fine, no problem, we got this, right? So those are the first 2 things. The third thing would be when both folks, their tempers flare and it gets very heated. And, that is what it is. And I talked about that already, so I'm not going to come back to it too intensely here. But the next thing that can happen, the 4th general scenario, is that you come to someone and you're like, okay, here's what I need in order to XYZ, like be my best self, have this meaningful interaction, feel safe, physically, emotionally, mentally, whatever it is. And you're calm, but the other person is not happy about that. They do not want that to happen. And so they can try to escalate the situation. And in this case, it's really important that you stay calm as best you can. It's always really important that you stay calm as best you can. And sometimes you can't, and those emotions happen. And so you step away. But if that other person is escalating, saying things, making accusations, whatever it is, having a script is really helpful because all you do in this situation is just say the same thing again and again and again and again and again until it sinks in. And I can tell you 2 things. One, from a physiological perspective, when someone becomes, quote, emotional, when they get angry, when they get stressed, the logical part of their brain shuts down. And this is true for you, it's true of your family, coworkers, whoever. When your emotions flare, when that stress response kicks up, the logical parts of your brain that tell you, oh, don't say this, do say this, maybe you don't do that, maybe yes, do this, oh, this isn't really a big deal, we can deal with whatever it is. Those parts of your brain physiologically are not accessible. That has really big implications because if you're talking to someone who's in a state of upset, whatever you say it's not gonna touch it, right? So your job in that situation is to stay as calm as you possibly can and just re-say the same thing. And the other thing that I can tell you from having these conversations with my family members and folks who are closest to me, I have experienced every one of these scenarios. So again, I just want to normalize, like, it all happens, it is all normal. No worries, no judgment. I have had many conversations where I'm like, oh, that went great. I've had many conversations where I'm like, oh shoot, that was bad. I really wish that didn't happen. And everything in between. And I have had these conversations where the other person is like, you don't like me, you hate me, like you're abandoning me, whatever it is. And I just say the same thing, like, no, that's not what I'm saying. What I said was, and then I would just restate my initial boundary that I was setting up. I've had conversations with folks close to me where I'm like, you need to speak to me in a different way, or our relationship will change in a way that I think neither of us wants it to change, because I will remove myself from this relationship in a significant way. And so that got met with, well, you're abandoning me, and well, you don't love me, and well, this, that, and the other. And it's like, no, what I said was that this is how I expect to be spoken to and treated. If that does not happen, here's the natural consequence of that. So really, like, I'm leaving this in your hands. You decide what you want to do. But from my perspective, this is where it's at. This is where it sits. And just saying that over and over and over again. And it may take a couple times, like a couple in one sitting, like saying the same thing several times and saying, okay, no, that's not really what I said. What I actually said is this. And just restating your script. It may not happen in one sitting. You may have to come back to it multiple times. And then, of course, there's this whole other issue of keeping boundaries that you set, which I'm running out of time today, so I'm not going to get into. But the first step certainly is being able to just say calmly, with composure, to whoever you're speaking with, if their emotions are getting heightened, no, actually what I said is this. Or if they nail on the head what you said, yep, that's what I said, exactly, you got it. And mirroring that back to them really clearly. So, hopefully that makes sense. I'm trying to figure out, I need to think through different really specific situations so I can provide better examples, because I think it does help to have really clear examples and modeling on this. And I've been thinking of the other thing that's going to happen in 2021 is that I'm thinking of launching my YouTube channel, and I want to have some example videos on there. So just so that, I know that most of us don't get really good modeling of this when we're growing up, and that is honestly half the battle. If you can see somebody else do it and see oh, that's how that's supposed to go, it makes it a lot easier for you to be able to do it and set good boundaries and stay calm rather than getting riled up about it. So if I will do my best and brainstorm some more specific things, because I think that would be of really good service. If there are situations in your life, and you don't have to give me specifics, but maybe, I don't know, if you have a parent or a kid or a spouse or a sibling or whatever it is, and you're having trouble with a boundary, or maybe there's a past scenario you're oh, I wish I had set this boundary, I wonder how that would, the best case of that would have gone, let me know. Reach out, send me an email or something. I put my contact information in the show notes, and let me know if there are any scenarios that would be helpful for you to have talked through and explained, that I can provide some specific languaging for. I'm happy to do that, and I think just the more specific examples, the better it would be. So, at any rate, this is something I'm working on. I could totally use your help, so let me know if anything comes up, and I'll keep my eyes peeled. And certainly, I am accustomed to sharing some examples from my own personal life, but we all have moments that are more or less flattering, and it's not my role to throw anybody under the bus, and I certainly want to honor the people in my life and not and create a boundary, a safe boundary for them around this. So I have shared today in some very general terms, and certainly any information that you share with me would be kept confidential, and I wouldn't share specific names or anything unless you wanted to, but yeah, that's just been something else that I've been thinking through, so let me know. I'd love to hear from you. All right, so should we do one last recap? That was sort of a digression, but overall, the more calm you can be as you're setting your boundaries, the better it's going to go. And so the best way I know how to do this, one, is practice. This takes time, it takes energy, it takes effort. It may not happen the first time or the third time or the fifth time, but you will get better at it. You will start to notice when your emotions are getting away from you, and you will start to be able to say, oh, right, let me step away from this and repeat this process. So the process is, one, feel the things. Feel the emotions, let them move, let them be in your body. Don't judge them, just let them be. Feel what's there, let it be. It will resolve, I promise. Without resistance, our emotions always move and they always resolve, and we always come back to a place of calm. The key there is without resistance, and that's what we tend to add in to the equation that makes things stick. So feel the things, let them move, don't resist them, don't judge them, and then reflect on what happened. Pull out those nuggets of useful information that tell you, oh, based on this context, this is where things kind of fell out of balance, this is where my sense of safety was compromised, and then this is how I need to get that boundary back in place so that I can restore my sense of safety and have meaningful connections and interactions with myself and the people around me. And then strategize what needs to happen for you to set that boundary back up. What's the best fence for you to set up, as it were? Or do you need like a house, or do you just need like a three wall, like 3 walls and a roof? I think there's a technical name for that, but you get the point. Like, there are different kinds of boundaries that are best suited for different situations. So what makes the most sense for you? Strategize on that. And then act. Go do it. Go set that boundary up. You're going to do awesome. You're well prepared. You've done all your work to get ready for it, and you're going to do so great. So go set that boundary up. And if it doesn't work, you just try again. It's all good. It's just an experiment. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not doing anything wrong. You're doing so good. So take courage, take heart, and if things go swimmingly well, fantastic. I'm so happy. And if things don't go swimmingly well, I've been there. You'll get another chance. You'll get another try. No worries. And, that's what forgiveness and grace are for, really. All right, my friend, that is all I have for you today. Like I said up top, if you want to dive into this more, and you're not really wanting to work with someone one-on-one necessarily, I recommend you head to my website, ponderandpractice.com/shop. And there are 2 workbooks there that you can get your hands on. One is Anger as Awareness, which is really helpful for learning to feel the feels and letting it move, and reconciling the fact that yes, in fact, you do have anger, and yes, in fact, that is 100% okay and normal, and what to do with that. And the second one is Build Better Boundaries, guidebook and workbook, which walks through some more specific questions about where are you at with your boundaries? How do you figure out what makes the most sense for you in the moment, and set those spaces for the most meaningful interactions. And then if you are in a place where you're like, yeah, some workbooks, I don't think that's going to cut it. I need some more specific one-on-one help. Let me know. I work with folks one-on-one. I coach folks through this. It brings me tremendous joy to help folks learn to trust themselves and rely on themselves. And there's just nothing like it in the world to see that transformation of someone coming from a place of, oh gosh, like I can't take care of myself and I'm angry and resentful and have no time for anything because I'm saying yes to all the things all the time, and oh my god, I'm like frenetic, intensely frenetic, and that transformation that happens into a space of, oh no, I got this handled, I'm good, like I can say no like a boss. Right, I'm in the business of helping people get to that space so they can really act from a place of choice and empowerment and say no so that they can say yes to the things that really matter the most to them. It's so important. It makes such a big difference. And if that's where you're at and you're ready to dive in, you can head on over to artfulboundaries.com. You can find some information, read through, make sure that what I have to say is what resonates with you, and then you can schedule an initial consult with me from that page as well. So that's all I have. Those are all the goodies. All right, my friends. Well, I hope that you had a lovely holiday. I hope that you are taking good care, getting some good rest. Just say no. Say no to one thing today. Seriously, like, look at your list of stuff to do and just cross one thing off. Just don't delegate it, get somebody else to do it, or just don't do it. It's fine. It's gonna be fine. I promise. Get some rest. That matters more, honestly, right now. This year has been bananas, and it's winter holidays, and, you know, go get your cup of cozy, whatever that is, and snuggle on in. Get a book. I'm into Harry Potter lately, but whatever you're reading. I always babble at the end of these, so I'm gonna wrap it up now. All right, my friend, take good care, and until next time, bye.